How many West Ham fans feel as if we're in some kind of beautiful dream that we just don't want to wake up from? But any minute now, we're going to be rudely awakened, only to find that it was all a dream. And when we wake up, David Sullivan and Karen Brady are still in charge. Daniel Kretinsky remains a distant figure. And with the transfer window just opened, we're about to sell half a dozen of our best players for next to nothing because our financial crisis is deepening and the chances of returning to the Premier League at first attempt seem more like a wish than a real possibility. But here we are. We are all wide awake. And a mere, 12 days or so after hearing that David Sullivan was stepping away from the operational side of things, the avalanche of good news keeps coming, seems to be non stop. Now, I've already covered many points. Brady gone and good riddance. Sullivan no longer involved in operational activity, which means no dodgy, questionable transfer deals, no questionable signings from his agent mates, no pleading constant poverty that we've got to sell before we buy. And I'm sure without his sidekick Brady around and with the warmly welcomed new CEO or interim CEO, Karim Virani, we already have better dialogue between the fan base and the club over issues such as the stadium and the many challenges it presents, to things like ticket prices, which has been demonstrated that ticket prices can be managed and lowered with us going into the relegated to the championship. And other things are being discussed: governance, accountability. All these things now seem to be reasonable discussion points rather than points of argument and disagreement between the old regime and the new one. And as I've said, the good news keeps on coming. There was talk on Monday that Kretinsky is looking at a new training ground rather than the three sites that we currently operate in. But none of the current sites are big enough to bring everything under one umbrella. I'm going to do a separate show about that in the next day or two, focusing purely on the options available to West Ham when it comes to either redeveloping the current training grounds or looking at a completely different site. And a new director of football is looking pretty imminent as well. Newcastle's head of recruitment, Steve Nixon, has told his club that he intends to resign if he hasn't already done so. And he is odds on favourite to now become West Ham United's new director of football within the next few days or as early as next week. Another show is going to be dedicated as to what Nixon can bring to West Ham in that role. And it's pretty interesting as well. But what I want to focus on here is the latest revelations that Daniel Kretinsky has decided to share through the Times interview that he did. And I'll tell you, some of the comments he's made are exactly what a lot of supporters have been desperate to hear for a long, long time. With the ongoing issues about our financial woes, there has been constant speculation that we're going to, this transfer window would have to brace ourselves because we're going to sell all our best assets following the relegation to the championship. Every day we seem to be getting stories linking Jarrod Bowen to yet another club, as well as Matthias Fernandez's quest to join Man United. And with Crescencio Somerville doing the business for the Netherlands in this summer's World Cup, there's already a queue of clubs wanting to prize him away from West Ham. But in the interview that Kretinsky has given to the Times, he's delivered a very clear message. West Ham do not have to sell their best players. And if that wasn't enough, I've also received information that Jarrod Bowen has already made his decision about his future at West Ham. We'll get into that in a moment. So, Kretinsky's influence at West Ham growing from 27% to 43%, which makes him the largest shareholder at the club. Kretinsky making it clear that promotion back to the Premier League is the absolute priority, not in 2 years or 3 years, but now, immediately. He said West Ham have got a credible strategy and that the club does not need to sell its players or its best players for financial reasons. Now, that statement alone should send a message across to English football. The Championship is a very different financial environment. The television money is nowhere near what it would be in the Premier League. Other revenues are going to get hit, such as sponsorship money and other commercial interests. And naturally, clubs have to balance their books, especially with the new squad cost ratio coming in. Yet Kretinsky is effectively saying, we can fund this, and that changes everything. He's also spoken about keeping the squad together because key players want reassurances that there is a serious project in place at West Ham. Now, according to Kretinsky, discussions have already taken place with the most important members of the squad. And the message from those players is simple: show us the ambition, show us the plan, show us the backing, and we'll believe in the project that you're talking about. Now, the news that Steve Nixon is about to become our director of football, I guess, is testament to the fact that Kretinsky does mean business, and he's moving fast to secure all his valuable assets, getting a director of football in, getting key players to stay on. And this seems to have convinced Jarrod Bowen in staying at the club. And if Bowen is committing, then I think other players will follow suit. Now, as a West Ham supporter, it's very encouraging because one of the biggest fears after relegation is that players immediately start looking for the exit door. But Kretinsky's comments suggest something very different. They suggest that players are waiting to see whether West Ham can genuinely build a promotion winning team. And crucially, he's prepared to put money behind that ambition. The other interesting part is the situation with Nuno. Remember, after relegation, and even I said Nuno's gone. There was speculation that he would leave. Many expected West Ham to go in a different direction when it came to managers. Yet Nuno remains in charge. Reports over the last few weeks that Kretinsky was the one who was who was the strongest voice for backing Nuno seems to have come to its fruition. Now, whether you personally agree with that decision or not, what it does show is that Kretinsky isn't standing on the sidelines anymore. He's actively shaping this footballing strategy. He's making decisions, he's backing the manager, and now he's publicly committing to keeping the squad together. Those are the actions of someone who's prepared or who's already in control. Um, The other major takeaway from all of this is that West Ham appear to be entering a completely different era, a completely new era. For years, West Ham supporters have wanted clarity. Who's in charge? What's the plan? What direction are we heading? All perfectly valid questions for a supporter base that cares about this football club. Right now, it looks increasingly likely that Kretinsky will be the man leading the next chapter of this football club. And whether you agree with every decision he makes or not, it's hard not to be encouraged by the fact that he's finally communicating. Supporters have been crying out for leadership, they've been crying out for ambition. And this interview at least provides a glimpse of how he sees the future at the club. Now let's move back to Jarrod Bowen. As many of you know, Bowen has been linked to various Premier League clubs ever since relegation was confirmed. The media narrative was pretty predictable. West Ham go down, Bowen leaves, end of story. That's what everybody's expecting. But news that has come my way suggests that Bowen has already made a decision to remain at West Ham United. Again, this is something not being reported publicly right now, but I expect to see clarification of it pretty soon. Now, I know what's happened on social media over the last few days, and I'm not oblivious to it. I'm not an ITK. And let me say first and foremost, I feel sorry for Gonzo for having been on the main receiving end of what's happened. I've been in touch with him and offered my support. But at the same time, other social media and YouTube West Ham channels were named. It was part of this so-called chart of peddling Sullivan's propaganda. Now, look, I've never made it a secret that I would receive snippets of information and often stated very clearly where that information came from. But I'm not and never have been an ITK, nor a Sullivan apologist, and nor a Sullivan propaganda platform for that matter either. So the news that's been given to me about Jarrod Bowen has not come from Sullivan, it's not come from Sean, before anyone jumps the gun and starts throwing further accusations. My understanding is that Bowen wants to see through a promotion campaign. and help bring the club back to the Premier League. If true, that's pretty enormous. Because when you talk about the identity of this football club, Jarrod Bowen is at the centre of it. He's our captain, he's the leader, he's the player that supporters look up to. In the immediate aftermath of relegation, Bowen made it clear that discussing transfers wasn't his priority. He stated that talking about individual futures would be disrespectful to the club and the supporters, and reminding everyone that he remains under contract and that his focus was on getting West Ham back into the Premier League. And it looks like he's going to be true to his word. He also apologised to supporters for what he described as the embarrassment of relegation and admitted that fans deserved much better. Now, these aren't comments of someone seemingly desperate to try and engineer a move away. And I know what you're going to say. Well, of course, he's got to say that. He's not going to come out and say, well, I want to leave and tough luck. But other players have done that in the past, not just at West Ham either. He feels responsible, but he understands what it means to West Ham and the fans. And he's determined to put things right. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest factors that maybe some people might overlook, maybe not. And that for Bowen is family. Bowen's wife, Danny Dyer, is expected to be involved in this year's Strictly Come Dancing. Hands up. Yes, I watch it. You can shoot me now. Actually, I don't know if I'm going to watch it because I don't like the new host. But anyway, we'll move on. She didn't get the opportunity last year. She's been given another chance to do it this year. And for many who don't know, Strictly is a big commitment. Contestants spent months rehearsing, filming, appearing in London throughout the competition, and so on. If Bowen moved to another Premier League club, it's particularly like up north, like Newcastle has been suggested, that would create a significant logistical challenge for him and the family. Staying at West Ham allows stability. It keeps the family together in London, and it allows both Danny Dyer and Jarrod Bowen to focus on what they want to do in the year ahead. Now, there is speculation that Bowen might join the likes of Chelsea or even Spurs just to stay in London. Possible, but I don't believe Bowen will do that. Footballers don't always make decisions based solely on footballing side of things. Well, not all of them. Family matters, lifestyle matters, and right now, West Ham can offer something that many potential suitors can't: continuity. There's another factor that can make next season the perfect time for Jarrod Bowen to stay at West Ham. This summer's World Cup should have been the pinnacle of his career at the age of 29. Instead, Bowen will find himself watching the World Cup from home after being overlooked by Thomas Tuchel. Now, for many players, that disappointment could trigger a desire to leave immediately, secure a move to another Premier League club that could offer a better chance of making squads like the Euros or future World Cups. But there's another way to look at this. Next season gives Bowen the opportunity to respond, to show Tuchel that he was wrong. England's qualification campaign for the 2028 Euros will continue throughout the coming year, and Tuchel will still be assessing players for future squads. International football doesn't stop after the World Cup. Bowen now has something to prove, and what better way to prove that point by captaining West Ham and driving the club straight back into the Premier League. Football is full of stories of players who use disappointment as motivation, and Bowen has always struck supporters as exactly that type of character. If he were to stay, score goals, create chances, lead West Ham to promotion, the headlines would write themselves. The captain who refused to walk away and took responsibility and brought West Ham back. And if that happens, it can become increasingly difficult for someone like Tuchel to ignore him when England squads are selected in the future. In many ways, staying at West Ham could actually strengthen Bowen's case rather than weaken it. Yeah, because success is measured, by performances, by leadership, ability to deliver when your club needs you. And let's not forget, it didn't affect the England career of another West Ham legend, Sir Trevor Brooking. He continued to be selected for England despite playing for West Ham in the old League Division 2. Look, don't get me wrong. We will sell players, but it looks increasingly likely that Bowen won't be one of them. Bowen signed a long-term contract running till 2030. That means West Ham hold the cards. Any club who's going to want to sign him is going to need to pay a massive fee, even though he's at the age of 29. We're not talking about a bargain championship player for sale. We're talking about a player who does still remain one of the best wide forwards in English football. So potential buyers are going to have to fork out a huge amount of money for him, and they're also going to have to match his wages. Look, there's a suggestion that players will have their wages cut by 50%. And with Bowen reportedly on 150 grand a week, that reduces it down to 75k a week. Still a decent amount of money when playing in the championship, but there are other suggestions that Bowen's contract doesn't have that clause. So clubs are going to have to match his 150 grand a week. But will him leaving West Ham improve his situation, especially when trying to make future England squads? I don't know. Will he be guaranteed to be a star player, starting every game? Will he have the same relationship with supporters? Will he enjoy the same status? I doubt it very much. Next season offers Bowen the chance to remind everyone exactly what kind of player he is, and perhaps remind, as I've said, the England manager what he might miss this summer. Then there's the emotional connection for Jarrod Bowen and West Ham United, because he's not just another player at West Ham, is he? He's one of the most important figures in West Ham's history. The, the player that scored the winning goal in Prague, delivered a trophy for West Ham, becoming captain. And players talk about unfinished business, and genuinely, Bowen seems to have that. If he leaves West Ham now, his history ends with relegation. That's what, a lot of fans might end up remembering him for, relegation rather than anything else. But if he stays, brings the club back to the Premier League, his legacy becomes even greater at West Ham. Imagine being the captain who takes West Ham immediately back up to the Premier League. He has an affinity with the club, and I think he feels that he owes us one. And perhaps most importantly, if Bowen stays, what message does that send to other players at West Ham who are thinking about their futures right now? It tells the dressing room that promotion is achievable. It tells potential signings that West Ham are meaning business. And it tells supporters that not everybody is going to abandon ship at the first sign of adversity. Now, look, things can change in football, offers can arrive, circumstances evolve. But as things stand, the information I've received is extremely positive. And when you combine that with Kretinsky's actions and comments about not needing to sell players, a big picture is forming at West Ham United. Maybe this isn't going to be the quick-fire sell that many expected. Maybe West Ham genuinely are preparing to attack the Championship with a squad capable of going straight back up. So where does this leave us? No quick-fire sales, club being backed financially, promotion the key objective, Nuno being backed, and from what I'm hearing, Bowen is ready to be part of that journey. And for the first time since relegation, there's a coherent plan emerging. Of course, words are one thing, actions are another. The transfer window will ultimately tell us which way we're heading. Look, let me know your thoughts and your comments below. Do you believe in Kretinsky's promises? Would Bowen staying change your outlook for next season, if it already hasn't done with all the positive news coming out? And do you think West Ham can bounce straight back to the Premier League? If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the hype button and hit the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on. And I'll be back very soon. As I've said, there's several stories that I need to catch up on. So do look out for those as well. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all soon.